I'm an optimist. I'm always betting on a budget, but probably if you look at where things are, we never want to see a government shutdown. I've lived through 3. It's not good. It costs more to reopen, and it just really is disadvantageous for the entire nation, including markets and the like. But what do I think will happen? I'm actually writing the energy and water bill for appropriations. We're going to mark that up next week in full committee. But the reality is, you look at the clock and things like that, probably a short-term CR, he's right. We do not want a government shutdown. But the key thing to remember, and I try to tell my friends in my party this, it's going to take 60 votes in the Senate to get an appropriations package, unlike reconciliation.
So will Republicans have a posture that involves Democrats in this process? What are you hearing from your colleagues across the aisle?
That's an interesting question. Right now, we're not receiving any help from Democrats. I can tell you with pretty certainty that my bill will pass out of my committee next week with all Republican votes. Now, when we go to the floor, that may be a different story. We have, obviously, 3 wonderful factions in our party. Our moderates are center-right. I'm in the center-right. And then our folks who are further to the right. So we've got to make sure that we hold our Republican votes together. But every once in a while, when we see increases, for example, in the Office of Science, which I'm going to put forth, in nuclear energy, and I'm getting tremendous bipartisan and bicameral support. Young progressives who agree with me on nothing come to me and support me on new nuclear. So we've got some things in some of these bills that are going to be attractive. I just don't know whether or not their leadership team in the House and in the Senate will allow them to do that. But the country does not want another continuing resolution. I don't think we've ever had 2 in a row. They're never good. They're preferable to a government shutdown, but they're never good. We need a budget.
Well, and so if getting Democrats on board with the budget is required here, to your point on needing 60 votes in the Senate, do you see the rescissions package currently being considered by the Senate as posing a danger to that bipartisan effort?
There's no question that it's less palatable to our friends in the Senate, both Republican and I think Democratic over there, largely Democrats. It will have a much easier time in the House. Remember, the rescission is rescinding, taking back money that's already been appropriated.
Which is why Democrats are saying, why would we make an appropriations deal with you if you can recant on it?
Indeed. But going forward, and again, the eternal optimist in me says, let's look forward. Let's get our budget done. The energy and water bill that I've written this year for the House is as strong as it was in 24. We passed it. It was great for energy, especially new nuclear. 25, we didn't get there. Why? Because of the continuing resolution. So the reality is you get out there, you put your best work product forward. The other Cardinals, subcommittee chairs on appropriations, Republicans have written very good bills. We've passed some. Some are going to be very difficult to pass.
What do you think about the Mike Rounds of the world who worry about eliminating funding for NPR? And I ask you this because, I believe it was Bill Cassidy said last evening, a senator from Louisiana, we've got to cut the funding because it's a partisan operation. But there are some lawmakers like Senator Rounds who say this is a lifeline for people in rural areas. You might not like what's on the NPR network, but these local newsrooms are delivering critical emergency information. Does he have a point?
Well, he has a vote. I don't know if he has a point, but he has a vote. And I have heard that rhetoric coming from some of my Republican colleagues. And prior to this discourse, I never did understand or know that that dynamic was out there. They feel that that is a lifeline to many areas in rural America. So if a senator particularly feels that strongly about it, it is going to have to be addressed. Again, there's not always an equal weight between the House and the Senate. One senator can really derail or stop a process. So we have to listen to that. However, we need to see strong reforms. I think at NPR there are things that are done there that really need to be addressed. I would like to see more of a political balance like we do on your great show. We've got to listen to both sides and let the American people then make their decisions. But I come from the right, others come from the left or the center. But the reality is we need balance.
Well, as Joe makes the point about the role of public notification, especially in these rural areas, that brings me to a question around emergency response, given what we've just seen play out in Texas, what frankly is still unfolding before our eyes with so many people remaining missing in hill country. Tennessee is obviously no stranger to natural disasters either. And I'm wondering if you're learning lessons about the way in which information was distributed, if it's too early to have those conversations, as this still is an active rescue effort, and the conversation around reforms to FEMA, as well as this teaching us that you still need to have the federal response able to be put into place.
You raise an excellent point. Anytime we have a national disaster, whether it's in Tennessee or anywhere across the great United States, there's sadness, there's disaster, there's tragedy, there's sadly loss of life and the like. After the event, we can learn from these events, sometimes how to predict these. We've seen Doppler radars and things put in my state over the years to watch hurricanes and watch tornadoes. There's a lot of tornadoes in Tennessee that touch down. These flooding incidents were horrific. The one in Texas is of a magnitude I don't think that we've seen in a long time. It's really, really horrible. FEMA will be looked at. Obviously, I know Christy Noem very well. I actually came into Congress with Secretary Noem. Wonderful lady. She'll do a great job. I think President Trump will do a good job. But I think the American people want to see reform. They want to see these largest federal organizations, agencies that have just really year after year just had bigger budgets, bloated budgets, and have not really spent wisely. I think if we start to spend our money more wisely, they need to be funded. I don't think you'll see FEMA go away, but I think you're going to see a reformed, stronger FEMA, as well as other federal organizations that are going to be more responsive to their ultimate constituents.
Well, this event in Texas also reminds us of the improvements needed to the grid, the electric grid that we talked to you about a lot, hardening the grid as well. We just saw the president's big, beautiful bill pass. You were part of the celebration, of course, and we saw a watering down of incentives for solar and wind. Did this bill do enough to secure nuclear, which is one of your most passionate issues?
Thank you. Yes, it did a lot for nuclear. At first, we were very concerned. I was very concerned, as was our very good Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright, wonderful man, doing a good job, about the nuclear tax credits. Excuse the pun, nuclear is hot right now. There's a lot of private investment. Markets are moving towards investing a lot of capital, and that was not the case 5 or 10 years ago. New nuclear is so important. Big nuclear is important. I mean, the larger nuclear power plants. We're seeing 3 Mile Island reopened. We're going to see a power plant in Michigan, an older one opened. We had Vogtle in Georgia. So we're going to have small, mid-size, and larger nuclear power plants. It's reliable. It's resilient. But yes, the big, beautiful bill was very good for nuclear. I don't think it was as disadvantageous to some of the things as solar as some of the people think it will be. Solar, I think, is here to stay, but it's got to find its place in the market. Wind has problems. Wind has major, major problems. But ultimately, we're going to see natural gas come back very strong. I think it's a very good bridge fuel. We're seeing TVA, my utility, building more gas as we get to nuclear. Nuclear is incredible, but new nuclear right now is going to take a lot of capital to build the first of a kinds. But when you build the 10th and the 100th, it will drop down in costs. But the nuclear industry in America is booming in every way.
Well, and when we consider the role nuclear may have in powering artificial intelligence and data centers going forward, to get that power to a data center, to allow the data center and the data centers being built to allow that to happen, you need copper for a lot of that transit. And the president says effective August 1st, there's going to be a 50% tariff on copper. Do you worry about the potential ramifications of that, knowing that by and large, it does not seem we have adequate supply to meet the kind of demand that we are expected to see?
We're going to wait and see where the president goes with copper, but you're absolutely right. Not only copper, but there's other metals and minerals that are important for this process. It's one of the reasons I support our national labs through the Office of Science. I think I have the best in the country at Oak Ridge National Laboratory in Oak Ridge. But the reality is our labs are looking at ways to use other products. Unfortunately, the Chinese have about a 90% share of this market. They control a lot of this market. We've allowed that to happen. As we regain some of that control with existing rare earths and things like that, it's important. But the reality is maybe we can use our labs to go out and find alternates that are more reliable, less expensive, more resilient. And that's part of our great national research that I don't think any other country, even the Chinese, can match.
We actually spent some time with a young nuclear entrepreneur who was at the White House a couple of weeks ago to talk about the future of this technology. The governor of Utah joined him on the air to talk about their project together. How quickly will we see these small modular nuclear reactors being permitted for use? I realize a big nuke plant is another matter, but these small modular reactors could be something that we see much sooner.
Well, fortunately, in the great state of Tennessee, with our great utility, the Tennessee Valley Authority, we actually have a permitted site at Clinch River. And that would be for an SMR, a small modular reactor with less output. They're smaller to build. They're easier to license. They've chosen a GE Hitachi model, which basically uses the existing fuel supply. So when you talk SMRs, you have to say, what would the SMR of today look like, and then maybe the SMR in 5 or 10 years? The reason for the other SMRs, we have very good designs out there, TerraPower, X-Energy, but they require a higher fuel. It's called HALEU. And actually, sadly, Russia produces a lot of HALEU. There's going to be a ban on that in 2028, but that's why I've worked so hard in fiscal 2024 to put up $2.7 billion so that the United States could then begin to have HALEU and LEU. Of course, we have LEU as an existing fuel, but we want to start enriching uranium domestically again. Think about it. We're the birthplace of the Manhattan Project. We started this technology, and we've let it basically wither away. America is coming back, so we have American companies doing it. We're attracting other foreign countries to this. Urenco and Orano are in the space, but Centrus is an American company doing this. So that is the fuel end of that. But right now, to get one built, we need to use, in my view, existing fuel supply, LEU, that they're using in the big plants, and designs that work. So Tennessee will lead in this regard. Utah will also be leading, and our friends in Idaho. I can't leave them out.
Well, on the subject of Tennessee, knowing that, of course, you're fresh off of the effort to pass the One Big Beautiful Bill, what impact are you expecting in Tennessee of the changes that were made in that bill to the way in which Medicaid benefits can be accessed and distributed? Who qualifies for them? What are you preparing your constituents for?
It's another great question. I just returned from home. I flew up this morning from Chattanooga, so I've been here in Chattanooga the past few days. I came up to have dinner with our great speaker, Mike Johnson, tonight. Most of my constituents, not all, everywhere I went, in rural America, very, very strong for the Big Beautiful Bill, no question about that. In Oak Ridge, I went up there, the same situation. The few Democrats I ran into, candidly, and my district is ruby red, but I represent all my constituents, and I'm very cognizant of that. Just as I tell friends of mine who are Republicans in Massachusetts and in blue states, their voice needs to be heard too. We're all Americans. The Democrats in the district are livid. They do not like this bill. The Republicans and independents I spoke with, very, very positive about that. Why? Number one, we raised the debt limit. That does not get talked about much. We raised it by $5 trillion. Why is that important? We were on the verge of a default. And give President Trump good credit. When he was talking to the members about why we needed to pass this thing, that was a sleeper that most people don't want to lead with. That's not your best card that you want to play with the American people, especially in our party. I mean, those are the strongest calls I'll get at our office when on the precipice of raising the national debt. But they say, no, don't do it. We can never go into default. So that was done. The tax situation is something that's going to impact most people. No tax on tips. I eat out a lot. The servers are happy. But overwhelmingly, where I live, it's not a hard sell. In bluer states, it's going to be a hard sell or a no sell.